Hey everyone, welcome back to Steve's View. Today we're diving into a topic that's been making waves across political circles in the United States. It's a story that touches on government power, media influence, and the trust, or lack of it, that Americans place in their institutions. Former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard has once again stepped into the spotlight, not with a campaign speech or a political endorsement, but with a series of explosive claims about how the Department of Justice may have been involved in shaping public narratives during past elections. Whether you support her or not, these revelations deserve a closer look. If they're true, they could shake the foundations of how we think about democracy in the United States. If they're not, they still raise important questions about how information flows in our society. So what exactly did she say? Why does it matter? And how does this fit into the bigger picture of media, politics, and power? Stick around, because we're breaking it all down step by step. Tulsi Gabbard, who served as a Democratic representative for Hawaii and ran for president in 2020, is known for her willingness to challenge both parties and call out what she sees as corruption or manipulation. In a recent interview, she made a stunning claim that the Department of Justice, the very agency tasked with upholding the law impartially, may have been involved in manipulating what information reached the public during key election cycles. According to Gabbard, this manipulation wasn't subtle. She suggests that certain stories were deliberately suppressed, while others, often unverified, were amplified to serve political goals. She described this as a coordinated effort where media outlets, influenced by behind-the-scenes pressure, chose to either downplay or exaggerate events depending on how they aligned with the interests of those in power. When the people who are supposed to protect democracy start shaping what we see, hear, and believe, Gabbard said, we have a serious problem. These are strong words, and they echo a growing sense among Americans that they're not always getting the full picture. Whether from traditional media, social media platforms, or government sources, the Department of Justice, or DOJ, is supposed to stand as one of the most impartial institutions in the United States. Its core mission is to enforce the law and ensure justice is served, without favoring any political party or special interest. But history shows us that even institutions built on ideals are run by humans, and humans are susceptible to bias, pressure, and sometimes corruption. Critics of the DOJ argue that over the years, its decisions haven't always aligned with pure justice. There have been moments when prosecutions, or the lack of them, appeared to benefit those in power. This isn't a new accusation. From the Nixon administration to the Trump years, there have always been questions about whether the DOJ has been fully independent. What makes Gabbard's allegations significant is that she isn't just saying there was bias. She's suggesting there was active manipulation of the information environment, something far more serious. Think about it. If an agency that should be protecting democracy is instead nudging the media or coordinating narratives, that's not just bias. That's an abuse of power. To be fair, the DOJ has consistently denied any wrongdoing in such matters. Officials argue that their actions are guided by the law and national security concerns, not political gain. But the lack of transparency often leaves room for suspicion, and once public trust is broken, it's incredibly hard to rebuild. This tension between the DOJ's official stance and the perception of its actions is at the heart of the debate we're having right now. The relationship between the U.S. government and the media has always been complicated. On paper, the media is supposed to act as a watchdog, holding those in power accountable. In reality, the relationship is much more intertwined. From the early days of American journalism, newspapers often had clear political alignments. Fast forward to the 20th century, and we see examples where media coverage was influenced by government narratives, sometimes in the name of patriotism, other times as a result of backdoor deals. Consider the Vietnam War. Many early reports were shaped by official statements that downplayed the severity of the conflict. It wasn't until investigative journalists started digging deeper that the public began to see the full picture. The Pentagon Papers exposed how far the government was willing to go to control the narrative. Then there's the post-9/11 era, when questions were raised about how the media handled stories related to weapons of mass destruction and the push for the Iraq War. Many outlets later admitted they didn't scrutinize government claims as critically as they should have. These historical examples remind us that manipulation doesn't have to be outright censorship. It can be as simple as emphasizing one story over another, or choosing which voices get airtime. No discussion of media and government influence would be complete without revisiting the 2016 election. That year was a perfect storm of leaks, hacks, misinformation, and political spin. One of the most controversial elements was the so-called Steele dossier, a collection of unverified claims about then-candidate Donald Trump. Even before the dossier's contents were confirmed or debunked, it was being cited as evidence in political debates and investigations. Critics argue that certain officials within the DOJ and FBI were too quick to treat the dossier as credible, feeding a narrative that painted Trump as compromised by Russia. Supporters of the investigation, on the other hand, say that any leads related to foreign interference had to be taken seriously, no matter how shaky. The truth likely lies somewhere in between. What's clear is that the story became a media firestorm, shaping public perception long before the facts were fully established. And in an election as close as 2016, perception matters. This was also the period when social media became a dominant force in shaping political discourse. Allegations of Russian bots, targeted misinformation campaigns, and algorithmic manipulation only added fuel to the fire. The result? Millions of Americans came away from 2016 feeling that someone, whether foreign actors, the media, or their own government, was pulling the strings behind the scenes. To understand today's debates, we need to go back to the Obama years. During his presidency, several policies and decisions shaped how information was monitored, controlled, or shared. One key moment was the expansion of surveillance powers under the Patriot Act and related programs. While these were justified as tools to combat terrorism, critics worried they could also be used to monitor political opponents or journalists. Obama's administration was also known for its aggressive stance toward whistleblowers. Figures like Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning revealed secrets that embarrassed the government, and the response was harsh. Supporters argued that leaks threatened national security. Opponents said they exposed the public's right to know, even beyond surveillance. There were instances where the administration was accused of working closely with major media outlets to shape narratives. Friendly interviews, selective leaks, and behind-the-scenes briefings gave the White House more control over what stories dominated the headlines. These actions may not have been illegal, but they set a precedent, one that future administrations could build on. And according to Gabbard, that's exactly what happened. If 2016 was a storm, 2020 was a hurricane. The COVID-19 pandemic, social unrest, and a fiercely polarized electorate created an environment where controlling the narrative was more important than ever. One of the most controversial incidents was the suppression of the Hunter Biden laptop story. When the New York Post published its findings just weeks before the election, social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook restricted the story's reach, citing concerns over misinformation. To many Americans, this looked like blatant censorship. To others, it was a justified precaution against foreign interference similar to 2016. The FBI later admitted it had warned platforms about potential hack and leak operations, but critics believe this warning was used as cover to suppress a legitimate news story. Meanwhile, fact-checking labels, shadow bans, and content removals became common on social platforms. Companies claimed they were fighting misinformation, but the criteria for what counted as misinformation seemed to shift constantly. The end result was that millions of voters felt they weren't being given the full story. And when people feel information is being filtered, their trust in institutions erodes, even if the filtering was well-intentioned. The rise of big tech has fundamentally changed how we consume news. Platforms like Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and TikTok have become the primary sources of information for huge segments of the population. Unlike traditional media, these companies use algorithms to decide what content users see. And these algorithms can be tweaked, sometimes in ways that aren't transparent to the public. Whistleblowers from within tech companies have claimed that political bias influences moderation decisions, while platforms deny deliberate favoritism. Internal documents and leaked emails have occasionally suggested otherwise. The government's relationship with big tech has also come under scrutiny. Reports of back-channel communications between federal agencies and social media companies, especially during crises, have raised alarms about whether the line between public safety and censorship is being crossed. Gabbard's claims about DOJ manipulation fit neatly into this context. If the government can pressure or persuade tech giants to silence certain voices, then the digital public square isn't as free as we'd like to believe. And this isn't just a US issue. Around the world, governments are figuring out how to regulate or exploit these platforms. Some are outright banning apps they can't control, while others quietly influence them behind the scenes. When we talk about media manipulation and government influence, it's easy to think this is just an American problem. But the truth is, many countries struggle with the same issue, sometimes on a much larger scale. Take China, for example. The Chinese government maintains strict control over the flow of information. Social media is heavily censored, and content that challenges the official narrative rarely sees the light of day. Citizens live in what many call a great firewall, where access to global news is filtered through state-approved channels. Russia is another example. During the Ukraine conflict, the Kremlin tightly managed what domestic audiences could see or hear about the war. Independent journalism has been pushed to the fringes, with many reporters facing threats or exile. Even in democracies like the UK, France, and Germany, there have been debates over how much the government should regulate online speech. Countering hate speech and fake news is important, but critics warn these measures can also be abused to stifle dissent. So when Tulsi Gabbard raises alarms about the US sliding toward information control, she's pointing to a slippery slope. If it can happen elsewhere, it can happen here, unless citizens remain vigilant. You might be wondering, why are we still talking about this? After all, elections come and go, administrations change, and scandals fade from the headlines. But the core issue here isn't tied to one party or one election. It's about trust. Trust in the media, trust in the government, trust in the platforms we use every single day. When that trust is broken, democracy itself is at risk. People stop believing what they read, what they hear, and even what they see. They retreat into echo chambers where only their side's version of events feels true. That's why this conversation is so important in 2025. With new elections on the horizon and new technologies like AI shaping how information spreads, the stakes have never been higher. If we don't address these concerns now, the next few years could see an even deeper divide between the public and the institutions meant to serve them. So where do we go from here? First, we need transparency. Government agencies must be held accountable for how they interact with the media and tech companies. Closed-door deals and secret guidelines only fuel suspicion. Second, we need diversity in our information sources. Relying on one platform or one news outlet makes it easy for manipulation to go unnoticed. Seek out different voices, even those you disagree with. Finally, we need to stay engaged. Democracy isn't something we can take for granted. It requires effort from all of us, questioning what we're told, demanding evidence, and speaking out when something feels wrong. Tulsi Gabbard's accusations may or may not be fully accurate, but they remind us of a bigger truth. Power always seeks to protect itself, and it's up to citizens to make sure that power stays in check. That's the big picture. What do you think? Do you believe the Department of Justice crossed a line, or do you think this is just political theater? And what about big tech? Are they protecting us or controlling us? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you found it insightful. Share it with friends who care about free speech, and subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive into the issues shaping our world. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay curious, stay informed, and stay free.